Okay. All right. So let's get this show on the road. So hi Isaac. We reviewed this today. This being the introduction to Siddhartha, a novel by Herman Hesse. In our session this morning, 9:30, we had Duran, as Jacob was there, and Fernando, along with Natalia. We should have two more people in our session next time, you and Deanna. So I hope you can continue to join us going forward. Okay, so what did we cover this morning? Well, we talked a little bit about Herman Hesse, about the author, born in 1877 in Germany, culture. He came from a family of readers, artists, and travelers. Family had lived in India for a time, and he was pious, or that is, he exhibited piety. He was a religious young man, and he had those filial duties of following through on his father's and mother's wishes for him. But he struggled in school. Formal schooling was not fun for him. So he would depart from it. Sometimes he had even a nervous breakdown at one point. He was a well-read bookseller and got really good at knowing a lot of the classics and contemporary works for his time. And this allowed him to have a professional angle on things. And so he started getting involved as editor, writer, bookseller. He went to India and kind of following in his parents' footsteps and to try to find some sort of roots there. Since his family had been there before, proved to be kind of a fool's errand in a way. He struggled while he was there. He didn't find any roots and just came back to Germany. It wasn't entirely a failed mission in the Siddhartha sense, in the regard that he learned while he was there that it wasn't a good fit for him. He was notified that he had bad eyes, and this kept him from going into the World War I. And eventually, down the line, his works were banned by the Nazis during World War II. Siddhartha, some of the themes: spiritual enlightenment, so search for the self, search for truth, harmony with the world, experiential learning over book learning. That's on the quiz. Experiential, like going out and living life and learning from that as opposed to learning from a textbook or book. Inner guidance over exterior teachings. In other words, you learn from mulling over your own thoughts, exploring your own mind. If you want to take this in a religious direction, we could say searching your soul, however you prefer to express that. But it's inner wisdom and knowledge as opposed to exterior teachings, like going to classes. The indirect path can teach us things. In other words, you might be going straight towards graduating from high school or going off to college or joining the military or, pick any goal. And along the way, different thing happens to deviate you from the linear path. And that is what ends up teaching you, not necessarily the direct path. We sometimes joke that life is what happens when you have other plans. So you were going to go to X and then Y happened. Enlightenment exists within the self, or within. Key terms. Hesse was not a scholar of Hinduism, Buddhism, Sanskrit, or Pali. He was knowledgeable, but he wasn't a scholar of these things. So some of the terms that he uses are used slightly inaccurately or a little out of context. But he was a very knowledgeable man. He was just using kind of a Western understanding of a lot of these terms. The essence of the terms, however, is captured, and in the context of the story, they work rather well. The Atman is the self, one's own nature, might be on the quiz. Nirvana, the blowing out, not the band with Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic and Grohl. It's actually a concept from the Buddhist religion, meaning to empty oneself of one's ego and get rid of all the junk to just be the simple you, and then eventually you become emptiness or nothingness. Satyam, the truth. Gautama, alternative spelling with the AU, Gautama, family name of a man who became the Buddha. The actual historical figure was Siddhartha Gautama. not to be confused with our protagonist, Siddhartha, who will meet Buddha later in the book. Samana, a wandering ascetic or monk. Karma, the actions that lead to reincarnation. We sometimes think of karma as our deeds and actions in real life that might lead to good or bad things happening to us in this life. Generally, though, karma in the religious sense means that if you're a good person in this life, you might be born on the next level of, say, the caste system. If you are a horrible person, maybe you'll be reborn as a cockroach. That's a slightly convoluted way of thinking of it, but somewhat rational. Brahman, supreme god, highest soul, member of the highest caste. A caste is a class in Hindu society, from the pure and godly to the untouchable. Here's your caste system. Buddhism in part is a rejection of Hinduism, and Hinduism's class system, and Siddhartha becomes all of the castes in order to find truth in the novel. Renunciation of family or domestic life for holy life, or Brahmacharya, is common not only in Buddhism and Hinduism, it's also seen in Christianity. See Matthew and Luke. It's also espoused or supported by Confucius and Socrates, who at different times in their teachings talk about breaking away from the family or from family duties to find the self and then return to the family. So this is part of our path in Siddhartha. Siddhartha's questions as he's mulling over things on page 3. This is kind of the fundamentals of questioning. Really, they're almost blasphemous questions. It's like atheistic type questions that maybe he shouldn't be thinking and saying out loud, but he asks them. He says, "Was it really Prajapati who created the world? Was it not Atman?" He also asks, is it meaningful to sacrifice? So when you're doing your sacrifice or your arti to the gods, is that really meaningful? Does that do anything? Did the sacrifice offer happiness? Yeah. It's supposed to, but does it? And where was Atman to be found? Where's this part of your soul that you're supposed to find in yourself? Where is it? Is it tangible? So these philosophical questions he's asking. Was there another path that the teachers and his father did not know about? Siddhartha in part 1 also, in The Son of the Brahmin, the first nominal chapter, main character Siddhartha at the beginning, at the opening of the story, lives with his parents and is a good son. He's liked by the young ladies around him, by his friend Govinda, his family. Siddhartha, though, is displeased with himself. There's something missing in his life, and it kind of keeps nagging at him, and he has this dissatisfaction. And it says on page 2 that he nurtures this dissatisfaction within himself. Siddhartha questions tradition in his own religion, as we mentioned earlier, and he asks to leave and follow the ascetics, the men and some women in the forest who are getting away from all earthly pleasures and distractions to find the truth by meditating in the wilderness or in the forest. What does his father see when he revisits Siddhartha's room? He sees his son standing there weak, staying awake, trying to show his will. And his father's concerned and lets Siddhartha leave. Siddhartha's father agrees to but his conditions are that Siddhartha, if he goes out and finds enlightenment, he's to return and share it with his father. If he goes out and finds failure or finds little or nothing, he's to return and worship the gods of his family as he always has. We watched this in class. I won't watch it here, but it's a very good video about a woman showing us her daily prayers, or puja in Hinduism. This is what he would have turned away. And then with the Samanas, none of it was worth the trouble of a glance. This is Siddhartha realizing that while he's wasting away in the forest, when he comes to the city, he sees everyone as this mortal decay. He's looking for truth by meditating and getting away from the earthly pleasures. He slows his heart and breathes little. He speaks with the heron and becomes a desiccated jackal and is picked apart by the hyenas. He's transforming himself into things around him to experience the world. He achieves the conquest of pain, hunger, and thirst, as well as fatigue. Govinda says that Siddhartha will be a great samana. And finally, at the end of chapter 2 with the Samanas, Siddhartha is able to control the mind of an elder samana. It's a pretty spectacular feat. This painting we'll talk a little bit more in class, so I'll share this over with you, and I'll see you tomorrow.